I'm not proud of the circumstances that led me to this moment. But here I am, trying to make sense of my actions and the emotions that have engulfed me. 3 years ago, my world was turned upside down when my wife cheated on me. It was a moment that shattered the trust we had built over years of marriage. She had a one-night stand with a stranger. And when the truth came out, it hit me like a freight train. The betrayal cut deep, and I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and confusion. But amidst the wreckage, I chose to forgive her. She was remorseful, genuinely sorry for what she had done, and committed to making things right. We had a long and difficult reconciliation process, where we laid bare our feelings and addressed the issues in our marriage. I had my share of faults too. We both contributed to the strain in our relationship. During those tough conversations, she told me that if I ever decided to step out, she would forgive me. I understood the pain of betrayal all too well and had no intention of putting her through that again. I believed we had moved past the affair, and our marriage was strong once again. For the next 3 years, we worked hard to rebuild our lives together. It wasn't always easy, but we navigated the challenges and found ways to communicate better. Life had its ups and downs, but I felt we were getting back to a solid foundation. However, everything changed last month when I lost my childhood best friend, Mark. His death was sudden and unexpected, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Mark and I had shared a bond that went beyond friendship. He was like a brother to me. His sister, Jess, was also devastated. I had always been close with her, and we shared a history that was more complicated than just friendship. Back in college, we dated briefly, but I had broken it off because I felt a protective instinct toward her as Mark's sister. It felt like crossing a line. So I maintained that boundary for years. Now, in the wake of Mark's death, Jess was experiencing her grief in a way that resonated with me. I could feel her pain, and it brought back memories of happier times with Mark. A week after the funeral, Jess invited me over for dinner and drinks. I hesitated, unsure if it was a good idea. But ultimately, I wanted to support her, and I thought it might be therapeutic for both of us. I arrived at her place, and the atmosphere was charged with sadness. Yet it felt familiar and comforting. We cooked our favorite meals together, sharing stories about Mark and reminiscing about the past. As the evening wore on, the emotions bubbled to the surface. We talked about our lives, our hopes, and our regrets. Jess opened up about the love letters she had written for me in high school, revealing how much she had cared for me back then. I never realized the depth of her feelings, and it struck a chord with me. After dinner, we decided to watch Netflix. The couch felt cozy, and before I knew it, we were cuddling, seeking comfort in each other. I can't pinpoint the exact moment when things shifted, but suddenly we were kissing. The intensity of that moment took us both by surprise. Hours seemed to slip away as we got lost in each other. A whirlwind of emotions swirling around us. Eventually, we fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in the warmth of shared grief and connection. The next morning, I woke up feeling a mix of guilt and relief. Guilt for crossing a boundary that I had held sacred for so long. And relief because, despite the emotional turmoil, we had not had sex. I felt that perhaps we were both just trying to cope with the loss. And this moment of intimacy was a misguided attempt at finding solace. When I returned home, the weight of what had happened pressed heavily on my shoulders. I knew I had to tell my wife, Sarah, about the kiss. I had promised her honesty, and I couldn't hide something like this from her. When I finally sat down with her and laid out the entire situation, the tears flowed freely from her eyes. She was devastated, but then she said something that struck me. She told me that maybe this was what she deserved for what she had done 3 years ago. Her acceptance of my actions shocked me. Did she really think that the pain of her betrayal warranted my infidelity? Even if it was only a kiss? I felt an internal conflict brewing, one that made my heart ache. I tried to reassure her that I never meant to hurt her and that the kiss happened in a moment of weakness. But deep down, I grappled with the realization that my actions could potentially mirror her past mistake. It was a complicated web of emotions, guilt, and betrayal that threatened to consume me. In the days that followed, I noticed the shift in our relationship. Sarah was hurt, and while she had shown some understanding, I could sense that the trust we had worked so hard to rebuild was faltering. Every interaction felt heavy with unspoken words and lingering doubts. I felt like I had opened a Pandora's box of unresolved issues. and now we were both trapped inside it. Our conversations about the kiss turned into discussions about trust, loyalty, and what it meant to forgive. We both acknowledged the scars that the past had left on our relationship. I felt guilty for putting her through this pain, but I couldn't ignore my own emotional turmoil either. As we navigated the aftermath of that night, I began to question everything about our relationship. Could we ever truly move past the affair she had with another man? Would this kiss with Jess become a permanent stain on our marriage? Or could we use this as an opportunity to dig deeper and heal together? Eventually, we sought couples therapy, hoping to find clarity and healing. I poured out my heart, explaining my feelings of inadequacy and how the loss of Mark had impacted me. I was struggling to balance my grief with my responsibilities as a husband. I realized that my emotional state played a role in my actions, and I wanted to understand the underlying issues that led me down this path. In therapy, we worked on communication, vulnerability, and understanding one another's perspectives. Sarah expressed her fear of being inadequate and how the emotional turmoil had caused her to question our bond. As we unraveled the layers of our relationship, we began to see each other more clearly, and the weight of our mistakes started to lift. With time, I learned that love is a complex journey, and sometimes the road is fraught with obstacles. I had stumbled, but that didn't mean I was beyond redemption. We both had made mistakes, and while they hurt us deeply, they also opened the door to deeper conversations about our hopes and fears. As I navigated this journey of healing and self-discovery, I realized that the true test of our relationship lay in our ability to grow together. While the kiss with Jess was a momentary lapse, it served as a catalyst for deeper understanding and connection between Sarah and me. We emerged from the experience stronger, more resilient, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the end, I had to come to terms with my choices. I had sought comfort in an emotionally charged moment, but I also learned that true strength lies in vulnerability and open communication. Together, we learned to rebuild what had been damaged and found solace in the knowledge that love, when nurtured and understood, could weather even the stormiest of seas.
It's funny how quickly life can change in just a few moments, and how one decision can ripple outwards, affecting not just you but everyone around you. That's exactly what happened with our planned trip to Hawaii, a vacation I had been looking forward to for months. My 3 friends and I, Sarah, Matt, and Jess, had meticulously planned this getaway. We'd been talking about it since the winter, dreaming about sunny beaches, warm waters, and the adventure of exploring a new place together. It was going to be our first vacation as a group, a chance to escape the grind of our daily lives. We managed to snag some great deals on flights, hotel accommodations, and even booked a few excursions. We calculated everything down to the penny, splitting the costs 4 ways, each of us paying around $800. It felt like a perfect plan. As the day of departure approached, excitement filled the air. We all arrived at the airport with plenty of time to spare, our bags packed and spirits high. But then things took a turn. As we went through TSA, Sarah was stopped at security. She had a weed pen in her carry-on, which she claimed she had simply forgotten about. In our state, possession was illegal, and the TSA officer was not amused. After a few tense moments, they called airport police, and the outcome was devastating. Sarah was not allowed to board the flight. Watching her face fall was heartbreaking. It was as if time stood still for a moment as we realized this was really happening. She didn't seem to grasp the severity of the situation until it was too late. They handed her a ticket for the infraction, and while she wasn't arrested, she was escorted out of the security line. We stood there in shock as she was taken away, helpless to do anything but watch. After a moment of stunned silence, Matt, Jess, and I made the call to continue with our plans. We had flights booked, and the idea of letting our trip go to waste felt unfair. Especially after all the planning. It was a bittersweet decision, one that weighed heavily on our hearts. But we couldn't turn back. We boarded the plane, hoping Sarah would be okay. The vacation itself was everything we had hoped it would be. The beaches were stunning, the food was incredible, and the adventures we embarked on were exhilarating. Each day was filled with laughter and new experiences. But there was an underlying current of guilt that never quite left me. I kept thinking about Sarah back home, missing out on all the fun. When we returned, I expected a certain level of tension. But nothing could have prepared me for Sarah's reaction. She was furious. And her anger was directed not just at the situation but at us. She felt betrayed that we had gone on without her. To make matters worse, she demanded that we reimburse her for her share of the trip, around $350 each. Which added up to a significant amount when you factored in everything else. In my mind, this was completely unreasonable. I felt a surge of indignation wash over me. It wasn't our fault that she had brought a prohibited item to the airport. We hadn't asked her to carry it. And we had made the decision to board the plane in good faith. I couldn't fathom why I should be held responsible for her choices. It was also hard to digest the fact that she had to take an Uber home. But that situation hadn't arisen from any malice on our part. No one had consciously withheld the keys to the car. It was just a chaotic moment at the airport. We were all in shock. And no one had thought to give her the keys amidst the whirlwind of emotions.